In the late 1980s, China was changing faster than anyone could fully understand. Markets were opening. Borders were loosening. For the first time in decades, ambition was no longer a crime. The air was thick with the dust of construction and the scent of possibility. Across the country, a generation was learning to navigate a new world. One where the old rules were fading and the new ones were still being written. It was a time of immense hope, but also of quiet uncertainty. She was in her early 30s, educated, composed, and quietly beautiful, a graduate of economics. Fluent in English, she believed in numbers, logic, and rules. She believed effort would be rewarded. She moved through the world with a sense of purpose, her mind sharpened by years of study and observation. In a society that often valued conformity, she carried an air of quiet independence, a belief that her intellect and diligence would forge her path. When the call came to enter the market, she answered. She left her stable government position and stepped into the volatile world of foreign trade, connecting local factories with buyers overseas, textiles, light industry, export contracts painstakingly written by hand. She built her company deal by deal, word by word. By the early 1990s, she was successful, not famous, not flashy, but undeniably powerful for a woman of her time and in her industry. But success came with conditions no contract ever mentioned. Permits, loans, customs clearance. Every signature required approval. Every approval required access. The logic of the market was clear, but the logic of power was opaque. At first, it was dinners, formal and professional. Then it became private meetings, late-night invitations. Then, expectations that were never written down, communicated only through suggestion and implication. They were not strangers. They were officials, gatekeepers, men whose names carried weight, whose favor could make or break a business. Refusal had consequences. Resistance had a price. What happened was never discussed openly. There were no reports. There was no language for it. There was no protection. Only silence and memory. The transactions that mattered most were not recorded on paper, but etched into the mind, a debt that could never be fully repaid. She did not break because of pain. She broke because she understood the system. The clarity that had made her a brilliant businesswoman now revealed a terrifying truth. She was allowed to succeed, but not allowed to say no. Not as a woman, not as a business owner. Not as a human being with boundaries. Her success was a cage, its bars gilded with profits but just as inescapable. Those who once protected her, the older generation of officials who appreciated her skill, moved on or retired. New power arrived, less discreet, more demanding. The unspoken rules became cruder, the expectations more blatant. She realized the truth too late. There would always be another dinner, another closed door, another cost. There was no safe future where she was. The path forward was a dead end. She did not leave for freedom, not in the grand abstract sense. She did not leave for a greater opportunity. She left to survive. With her language skills and extensive business experience, she found a legal exit, a series of business trips, then distance, then a final, deafening silence. She sold her company for a fraction of its true value. She left behind years of tireless work, a network of relationships, and a city she once loved, a city whose rise she had helped build. In the United States, she was nobody. No connections. No power. Her name meant nothing. Her past successes were invisible. The language was familiar, but the culture was alien. She was stripped of her status, her influence, her identity as a leader. But for the first time in years, her body belonged to herself. The quiet ownership of her own person was a freedom more profound than any she had imagined. This is not a story about one woman. It is a story about systems that reward success but punish boundaries. About progress without protection. About silence mistaken for consent. She did not abandon her country. She escaped a structure that refused to see her as fully human. And in the quiet anonymity of a new life, she survived. Some stories are never written down in history books, but they are still true. At the very same time, on the other side of the world, another life was quietly approaching its own turning point. In a quiet American university town in the early 1990s, life moved at a different pace. Wide green lawns rolled between old brick buildings, and students rode their bicycles, their futures stretching out before them like the open campus paths. Here, a man named Mike was building his own future. He was an economist in his late 30s, a respected researcher of development, reform, and institutions. In the lecture hall, with graphs and charts projected on the wall behind him, he taught with a confident clarity. He firmly believed that systems were not just abstract ideas. They could be measured. He believed that progress, real progress, always left a visible trace, a trail of data that told a story. And what a story the data told. On paper, the transformation happening in the East was nothing short of remarkable. Mike would sit alone in his office late at night, surrounded by stacks of reports and economic charts. The lines on the graphs all pointed up. Productivity was soaring. Exports were growing at an unprecedented rate. An entire nation was reinventing itself at a speed that history had never seen before. It was a clean, powerful narrative of success. Yet, something about it unsettled him. The numbers were perfect, almost too perfect. They were clean, sterile. They explained the outcomes, the GDP, the trade balances, the investment figures, but they felt hollow. They couldn't capture the experience. They didn't tell him what it felt like to live through that change, to be a person swept up in that historic tide. The human element was missing, and its absence felt like a gaping hole in the data. This feeling of disconnect grew stronger over time. Then one day, during a seminar, as his colleagues debated the latest economic models, someone said it, almost as a throwaway comment. China is just too complex to be understood from the outside. The conversation in the room moved on, but that one sentence didn't. It stayed with Mike, echoing in his mind long after the seminar had ended. It wasn't an accusation, but it felt like a challenge. Was he, with all his charts and figures, truly just an outsider looking at a reflection? The thought wouldn't let him go. He realized the comfortable distance of his office, his university, his continent, had become a limitation. The data wasn't enough. The reports were just shadows on the wall. To truly study change, he understood he would have to step directly into it. He couldn't go as an expert, armed with preconceived theories. He couldn't go as a detached observer, taking notes from the sidelines. He had to go as someone willing to be completely and utterly confused, ready to have all his assumptions shattered. The decision, once made, came with a sense of inevitability. On a large map hanging on his office wall, he marked a location in China. He filled out the application forms, not for a short research trip, but for something more immersive. He packed a suitcase, not just with clothes, but with a new sense of purpose, the pursuit of understanding. And so, as one woman was desperately leaving the East just to survive, a man was moving toward it, driven by a need to understand. They were strangers, from different worlds, on different journeys. They did not know each other. And at that moment, they didn't need to. Unseen forces were already at work. History, in its grand, silent design, had already placed them on intersecting paths. Their stories had not yet met. But they would,